The Checkpoints is presented by pharmaceutical company GM Pharma.
In July 2024, the consumer price index decreased by 0.4% compared to the previous month, while the annual inflation rate amounted to 1.8%. With regard to the annual core inflation, the prices increased by 1.2%, while the annual core inflation without tobacco amounted to 1.1%, according to the preliminary data from the National Statistics Office of Georgia, Geostat. We are concerned about some anti-democratic actions, false statements about the USA, negative rhetoric. We want to continue working together to help realize the aspirations of the Georgian people, U.S. Ambassador to Georgia Robin Dunnigan said. According to her, the USA has repeatedly expressed concern and asked the Georgian government to reconsider its actions.
Let me start by reiterating the absolute support of the United States government and the American people for the people of Georgia. We have been partners for 33 years. 33 years we've worked together, we have fought together, we have helped build schools together and clinics together, and we've done that together to help support Georgia's independence, its sovereignty, and its path to Euro-Atlantic integration. And we will continue to do that for the people of Georgia. You asked about the Secretary of State's statement yesterday that we are pausing some assistance to the government of Georgia. Why did we do this? We have spoken many times with the government of Georgia about some of the actions that we are extremely concerned about. Some anti-democratic actions, such as the foreign influence law, but other actions as well, about the false statements about the United States, the negative rhetoric about the United States in the West, and we have expressed our concerns many times, and we have asked the government to reconsider its actions, and we've also said that we would be reviewing our bilateral relationship. And yesterday, Secretary Blinken announced that as a result of that review, he is putting on hold, on pause, some portion of our assistance that goes directly to the government. Our assistance to students and teachers and farmers and small business owners and community activists and civil society organizations. That assistance will continue. Our assistance for now to the Georgian Defense Forces will also continue. That has not yet been affected, but as the Secretary has said, everything is under a review. What we hope to see is, unfortunately, the European Union has said these actions and this disinformation has led to a halt in Georgia's EU accession process. And what we would love to see is for us to work together again to help realize the aspirations of the Georgian people, to become a member of the Western family of democracies. And we are ready to restart that relationship. So I hope that we can get back on track and the government can take some important steps to help us do that. But I want to reiterate, we will always be a friend and partner to the people of Georgia.
Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan operating costs have increased. According to BP data, in the first half of 2024, $70.5 million was spent on the pipeline operation, while in the same period of 2023, the operating cost stood at around $59 million. In addition, the capital costs of the oil pipeline between January and June 2024 amounted to around $18 million. This is The Checkpoints. I'm Elena Guangelashvili, author and the host of the show, and the Checkpoints team is ready to sum up business and economics week for you. The International Court of Arbitration of the International Chamber of Commerce, ICC, denied Anaclear Development Consortium's claim against the government of Georgia. The plaintiffs tried to recover the value of the investment of ADC and its investors following the Georgian government's January 2020 termination of the investment agreement with ADC to develop the Anaclear deep water port. The Supervisory Board of the Anaclear Development Consortium says in a statement on July 30, details about the decision and the arbitration proceedings are confidential. However, Ted Jonas, member of the ADC Supervisory Board, sat down with the checkpoints to respond to some statements from the government. Mr. Jonas, welcome to the show and thank you for your time. Mr. Jonas, what is this 650,000 lari that the dollars that the government is mentioning?
Yes.
And today the Deputy Minister, Justice Minister, told us that this money will go straight to the state budget and that you are paying it to the state, not the court.
Well,
person.
you know, he told so many lies in his statement that I just listened to in Georgia, and he told so many lies. That's one of them to begin with. And he's a lawyer, and he knows better, okay? Both parties had to advance $650,000 each to the ICC as payment to the arbitrators for their salary and as payment for the fees of the ICC. We made an advance of $650,000. The Georgian government made an advance of $650,000. The arbitral tribunal said that because we did not succeed in our claim, we had to pay the $650,000 for the Georgian government that they paid to the arbitrators' salaries and to the institute. So that means that we are going to reimburse the Georgian government for the $650,000. But it's the payment, it's the same as if we had paid it to the ICC instead of them. So when he says it's a payment to the budget, he's lying, because in fact it is a reimbursement to the government for money that they already paid to the ICC. The important fact here, Elene, is that the $650,000 is a tiny fraction of the legal costs of the government in the case. I am not allowed to say that number. The only thing I will say is that it was many millions of dollars. It was twice as much as our legal fees and costs. Usually the winning party will receive all of their attorney's fees and costs, which in this case was many millions of dollars. The tribunal ruled that this case was so close and our case and our efforts were in such good faith and so thorough that there was no reason to make us pay the government's legal fees. Now, what's important about that is it shows that when the government says that the tribunal agreed with the government's case down the line and that the tribunal dismissed all of our arguments, that is a lie. They are continuing to misrepresent what was in the opinion. The tribunal said this case was so close and we respect the efforts of the claimants, us. We are not going to assess the legal fees on them. So let me just tell you that that $650,000 that we will pay to the budget to compensate for what it paid to the ADC is a very small fraction. I can't say the percentage because then I'd be giving away the whole number, but it is a very small fraction of the government's legal fees.
So you're saying that it is, even though ADC lost this case, it is still fair for the taxpayers to cover those costs and
I
not
think it's terrible.
for ADC
I think it's
terrible.
Well, it's fair because the government was representing the taxpayers. It's the Georgian government that made the decision to terminate the investment agreement. It's the Georgian government that made the decision to not engage in settlement discussions with us so that this problem and dispute could have been solved outside arbitration. So instead of working it out outside of arbitration, where they would not have run up this large number, I almost said it, this large number in legal fees, and they could have done a transaction involving us and a new investor that would have resolved everything outside the arbitration. Instead, they burned up a very large amount of money fighting this case. And after they burned up the taxpayers' money fighting against us, which is something that they didn't have to do, here we are still sitting with no Anaklia port and also no deep water port at Poti. And it's really impossible to talk about the Anaklia situation and the Anaklia case without addressing Poti as well.
But what about the trust of ADC, whatever ADC has said over these many years that this dispute was in place? Because the outcome is still the fact that you lost the case.
Correct. The interesting thing is, and the surprising thing is, that the majority opinion actually does not deny the arguments that we made about the government's misconduct. It doesn't deny that. So again, it's a lie when a government official says that they rejected all of our arguments. They absolutely did not. They rejected two important arguments. They said, okay, maybe the government acted very badly. Maybe the government acted even in bad faith, okay? But that was not the cause of the project's failure. Causation is very important in law. I can say, you did all these bad things to me, and it caused X to happen. And the court can say, yes, I agree he did all those bad things to you, but it's not what caused X to happen. So
what was the cause?
According to the court?
Yes.
According to the tribunal, the cause was that the government set up difficult, even impossible tender conditions to begin with, and that we were foolish or we took the risk of assuming those conditions. The government always said, and I think this is what's so strange, the government in 2015, 2016 designs a tender, invites participation, negotiates with us, and signs a contract with us, and says we're backing the Anaklia project. But their defense in arbitration was they should never have signed it in the first place. They were stupid. They should never have done a deal with us. And we always thought, what a crazy argument. They involved us in this project, and now they're saying that we should never have done it in the first place. But essentially, the tribunal adopted that argument and said that we assumed the risk that the government had not given us exclusivity, and therefore Poti could develop a competing deep water port, which would ruin equity investor and financial interest in Anaklia. So the first issue was that we assumed the risk, and that the cause of the project's failure was nothing that we did or failed to do. In fact, the tribunal recognized how and expressed its respect for all of our efforts to get the project built, but that there was nothing that we could do, and nothing that the government had to do, like provide a guarantee or anything else, to make the project succeed. As long as AP Mahler Terminals continued to have the right to build a deep water port at Poti, and the government was not restricting them from doing that in order to promote Anaklia, there was a market risk that nobody could get past. The interesting thing is that market risk still exists. To this, right now, the government has retendered Anaklia, has given it to these Chinese companies, and yet AP Mahler Terminals is still saying they're going to build a deep water port at Poti. Those Chinese investors, who I have no affection for, but nonetheless, those Chinese investors should be saying to the Georgian government, wait a minute, what screwed the Anaklia project before is that you didn't give them exclusivity. You didn't sideline Poti. You still haven't sidelined Poti. So the project, this is very important, the project is as likely to fail now with the Chinese investors as it was with us, because Poti is still a competitive and market threat that's keeping other investors away. And the second point, the reason that the IFIs wanted a guarantee was exactly because of this unknown risk on Poti, and I have heard that the Chinese investor is also asking for a guarantee, and an even bigger one than we asked for. So we are in a situation where the government has in no way solved all of the market conditions and structural conditions that the arbitration panel said were the reason why this project failed. The government hasn't solved them. And we don't know whether AP Mahler Terminals is going to really build a deep water port at Poti. So here we are sitting, the government killed the ADC project, the government has not created the conditions for the Chinese project to succeed, and we don't know whether AP Mahler Terminals will build a deep water port. So here we are, years and years later, with no deep water port on Georgia's Black Sea coast, and that is a huge cost for this country's economic development and jobs.
What the Prime Minister Kobachidze said today, probably you also listened to that. He mentioned that even the Constitution was amended so that the ADC could draw investments for this project.
The government, and all of this is already, we've said in public statements, so this is not referring to the arbitration decision. The government did do a lot to support the project until Ivanishvili fired Georgi Kridikashvili in May 2018. As we have said, Ivanishvili started to push the Poti project as an alternative, or instead of Anaklia, from late 2017. And then when he actually officially took power as the chairman of the Georgian Dream Party in May 2018, he fired Kridikashvili. And the whole tone of the government towards the project changed at that point. So, yes, there was significant support from the government until essentially the spring of 2018. And then from that point, you start to see major interference in the form of granting a permit to AP Mahler Terminals to expand Poti Port,
yes,
which freaked out all of the investors.
But the main thing here is how was that communicated with the arbitration court? Did they differentiate between these nuances that you are now talking about, how the project was being regarded by the government?
Of course,
and all
we
these
made all
changes.
these. Yeah.
And
so
despite that.
The things I'm talking about were, of
case.
course, in evidence in the arbitration case. This was a huge and complicated arbitration case. That's why it took 4 years. The decision took 1 year to issue, all right? There is a dissent in the case. It's 2-1. The opinion is extremely long. There were thousands and thousands of pages of documents, testimony, expert witnesses. It's hard to know exactly what you can say. Very long period of hearings, very thorough process. So absolutely, all of our evidence about the government's misconduct, the things that I'm telling you, which we had also said publicly, that was all put into the arbitration in the proper evidentiary form. And of course, the government did the same thing from their side. The government was very well and very professionally represented, as were we. So all of this was in evidence. And it is very hard for us to understand how the tribunal could have heard and seen all of that evidence, basically agreed that the government was not supporting the project, agreed that the government was at the same time promoting the Poti Port project, agreed that that looked like bad faith, but nonetheless, on the narrow words of the contract, we assumed the risk. That was a technical issue and we had no right to complain. The dissent disagreed with that very strongly and said that the government's conduct undermined the contract with us from the very beginning, was bad faith from the very beginning, and he saw it as a breach of the contract or creating conditions that made it impossible for us to perform.
Ted, you mentioned in the press conference yesterday that the government officials negotiated with you the settlement of the dispute. Why did ADC refuse to that, and what were some of the conditions?
Did we refuse?
Yeah, or what was the case? Why did you mention this
All right.
settlement thing? Was it before? Was it within the frames of the? Yeah.
So first of all, before we
and
filed,
what were some of the conditions? Because that might be interesting if you
it's a
can
little bit. This
disclose
is difficult again because of confidentiality issues. I can say clear of confidentiality. From the time I came on the board in August 2019 until we filed the case in the end of July 2020, 4 years ago, we continued to offer, bring investors, make proposals for settlement discussions. Government was absolutely not interested, okay? So we had no choice but to file the arbitration. Once the arbitration started, in approximately late 2020, the U.S. Ambassador Kelly Degnan encouraged the Georgian government to have discussions with us about settling the dispute. She played a very constructive role, Kelly Degnan. And we began discussions. I met with the prime ministers, with Gacharia, and then a video meeting with Kharibashvili when he replaced him. And Natia Tarnova, who was the Minister of Economy, was designated to carry out these discussions with us. The discussions with Natia Tarnova were extremely constructive, meaning that the 2 or 3 issues that the government had said, we can't solve these questions, it's not up to us to solve these questions, and that's why, you know, we don't have to provide a guarantee, we don't have to give you an exclusivity over Poti Port, and that's your tough luck. That's what the government had said before. When we had negotiations with Natia Tarnova, all those issues were on the table, and all those issues were actually quickly and easily agreed. She was, however, stopped from, all I can say is that we had an agreement for how we were going to proceed during the summer of 2021 in those settlement discussions, that the government then did not do what it said it was going to do, and the discussions were stopped. Now let me mention something here. Settlement discussions are normally confidential in the sense that they cannot be used in the proceeding, in the arbitration proceeding. So we were not able to talk about this during the arbitration proceeding, but now the arbitration proceeding is over, and those settlement discussions can have no influence on the result of the arbitration. But when the government says, for example, I mean, they say crazy things. Papuashvili's speech yesterday was like the speech of an insane person, or a person who has conspiracy theories in his mind. When they say that we were trying to grab money, we wanted $1.5 billion, all of this was a fraud scheme against the government, they are lying. They know that's not true. Natia Tarnova knows very well that that's not true. They know that the actual number of damages, lost profit, that we were asking for is 1/3 of the number that Bregvadze mentioned yesterday. And that...
And Deputy Minister also
correct.
mentioned
they're lying.
$1.5 billion.
Either their lawyers are not doing a good job and
level.
not informing them, or they're lying. But more than that, I said to you on your TV show, I said to other journalists on their show, and I said to Natia Tarnova in settlement discussions, what we're talking about is the investment amount. The investment amount of $79 million. The amount that ADC invested in building the Anaklia project, dredging the harbor and everything is $79 million. That number is audited, and that number was accepted by the Ministry of Infrastructure as our valid expenses. For the government to now say things like they put in $3 million, they put in $15 million, it's more lying to the Georgian public. They know, and it's been discussed in every forum, that we had to ask for lost profits because that is the normal request in a breach of contract case like this. But what we are after is to recover the investment, and that's a negotiable number, but that they have always known that what we were after was the $79 million that was the amount of the investment, which was a negotiated number. We would say $79 million plus interest. They might say, ugh, your investment's only worth 60 now, whatever, it's a negotiable number. But there was never any desire to pull money out of the budget. Not only were we looking only for the amount of the investment and not a larger number, We also did not want to receive it in cash, and we always made that clear. We don't want $79 million out of the budget. What we want, Georgian government, is find another investor, okay, find a majority investor, and either we take an interest in the project, an equity interest equal to our investment, proportional, or that investor pays us off. We never wanted to take the money out of the budget. We have been very consistent about that.
What does it mean in your statement that you are disappointed with the decision?
Well,
finally, overall, is it
are.
a fair decision? Do you trust the court, and is it a fair decision?
Those are two different, well, basically three. Do I trust the court? Yes, I trust the court. It was a professional, good panel. There's no guarantee one is going to win a law case. I have always said this was a hard case, that it was a 50-50 case, because the contract was very tough on us in terms of shifting the risk to us. On the other hand, the government's behavior was awful, and we could document that the government's behavior was bad, and we could show that the government did not support the project. Our theory of the case was that the government's conduct is so bad that under Georgian law, you have to find that they have breached the contract by their conduct. And the government's position was something not like a Georgian law position, but more like, I would say, English law, saying that, well, you know, the problem is you accepted risks and we had no obligation to help you. You know, so the panel, the arbitration panel, we think it's strange. We disagree with the decision. And again, the dissenting arbitrator absolutely makes this case, which is that it's very weird for the majority to say the government, yeah, we can accept that the government engaged in all this misconduct, but it doesn't even if it was in bad faith, it's not. They didn't have a good faith obligation to help the project or to not develop POTI, this kind of thing. So they took this very narrow view that under the contract you had assumed the risk. And again, there was this causation issue. Look, when I looked at this case and look at this case objectively, there was essentially a pathway for the government to win on the law, and there was a pathway for us to win on the law, and two of the arbitrators agreed with the government. And that's the way it is. And it was always a tough and a close and a difficult case. But when you read, it's interesting that when those of us on our side, and of course we're disappointed and upset because we wanted to win this case, we claimed damages, we claimed breach of the contract, we did not succeed in that. But when we read the case, it's kind of like, well, they understood our arguments. In a way, they basically accepted our arguments. But then they just took this very narrow view that that doesn't constitute a breach of a contract. The dissent points out, and I think that we would point out, that they did not adequately consider the reality of what was going on here, the real context of what was going on here, the importance of government support in a project like this. So it was factors like that. But I want to say something.
So
yeah.
would you say that it was, from this standpoint now, was it right for ADC to create all this buzz and to create the expectations that, you know, the whole geopolitical context of a nuclear port project would be examined at the arbitration court, and that would be one of the main...
First of all, it's a law. They are there to look at law. They're not there to make political decisions.
Definitely.
So I never expected, nobody on our side expected that the arbitration panel would rule in our favor because they saw us representing the West and they saw the GD representing Russian interests or something like that. We never had, you know, we're lawyers, we're professionals. That's not the way you argue a case. That's not the way you go.
So that wasn't in the case as well?
Well, it was we had to explain how did it happen that the Georgian Dream government started out supporting this project and then stopped supporting it. So nobody actually still knows the answer to that question. Was it Russian pressure? we said, yes, it may have been Russian pressure. You and I have talked before that Roman Kakulia, the chairman of the Economic Committee, in January 2020, Georgian Dream senior parliamentarian, said in a television interview that Bidzina did it because of Russian pressure. So there was absolutely evidence, including from Georgian Dream's own politicians, that Bidzina was protecting Georgia from Russian pressure by killing this project. But there are other theories about what Bidzina's interest was. He didn't like Mamuka, he didn't like Kvirikashvili.
But the outcome is what it is.
The outcome is what it is, and I want to emphasize something.
Just 30 seconds.
I just want to emphasize here.
Finish.
All this stuff that we're talking about, I'm sorry, is not that important in the public sphere. What is important in the public sphere is that this project still has not been built, and the government is in an absolute mess today in its policy about ports.
That's another thing that we
there's
have to
nothing
discuss,
good
and we will
there's
be
nothing good
discussing.
for the Georgian public or the Georgian voter in where we're sitting right now.
Thank you. What was new in business and economics this week? Natia Taktakishvili will tell us more.
Kochachkhaidze, the founder of Askaneli, talks about the importance of modern technologies in wine production and states that innovations are constantly being introduced in winemaking. One of these innovations is the introduction of electrodialysis machine, which maintains the quality of the wine. According to him, the company attaches great importance to the quality of manufactured products, which is the biggest promotion for them. This device is quite expensive, and we are the only company in the region that uses electrodialysis machine in winemaking. We pay great attention to quality because it's the biggest marketing campaign. You can spend a lot of money on making and not get the results you want. When a person likes wine, he searches for that wine himself and buys it again. This technological cycle, which we introduced in the enterprise, gives us very good results, said Kochachkhaidze. Company Askaneli was founded in 1998. The company owns hundreds of hectares of winemaking facilities in Kakheti and Tbilisi and one fruit distillery in Guria. In addition of production, more than 60 denominations of wine. Company produces 8 brandy, Chacha and Brut. ADB is preparing a strategy and action plan for developing Georgian resorts. Late last week, a meeting was held between the Business and Asia Development Bank. The founder of BIOLI says that it's necessary to start research for the development of resorts because the data has not been updated for the last 60 years. According to Tamas Chedlidze, investors will not be interested in Georgian balneological resorts. Its steps are not taken in this direction. Our investments have already exceeded 43 million USD and it's still not profitable. A normal businessman who only thinks about the business would not invest a penny in this dense forest and arrange all this. So the state should create 3 conditions for investors: new research, legislation and infrastructure. Believe me, a lot of investors will come. I will personally bring investors from Switzerland, Europe and America, says BIOLI founder Tamas Chedlidze. BIOLI Wellness Resort is located in Kojori, 16 kilometers away from Freedom Square. BIOLI Wellness Resort features accommodation with a garden, free private parking, a shared lounge and a terrace. The accommodation offers a 24-hour front desk, airport transfer, room service and free Wi-Fi throughout the property. A continental, Italian or American breakfast is available each morning at the property. At the accommodation, you will find a restaurant serving European cuisine. Construction company Arki presented a new residential complex, Arki Rustavi, which will promote urban development in the city of Rustavi with its modern exterior. The development of city of Rustavi showed us the great potential and opportunity to start the construction of such a large-scale project as Arki Rustavi. I'm sure that this will be one of the most outstanding projects with its infrastructure and exterior, Ilya Zulaya, founder of Arki, said. Arki Rustavi is a large-scale complex with 10 floors and 100 168 apartments, Rustavi Central Park, supermarkets, the shopping sectors, Rustavi Mall, 2 public schools, swimming pool, markets are a few minutes away from the property. Arki Rustavi is built with energy-efficient building blocks of German brand Eaton. It means that 40% less energy is used for the heating of cooling the building, which reduces utility costs further. The history of Arki began in 2006 and already unites more than 37 residents. Today, Arki is a leading development company in Georgia, having implemented 49 projects. At this stage, 20 projects are under construction, including a branded hotel in the Black Sea resort of Batumi. In the near future, it's planned to build a new residential building, hotels, and local and international brands in Tbilisi and at various regions in Georgia. Bitina Ivanishvili's Tourist Development Fund has been engaged in the development of hotel projects in Slovakia as well as Abastumani for more than 7 years. As of now, the fund operates 2 hotels, one in Shekwatili Paragraph with an investment value of $130 million and the other in Tbilisi, $161 million. According to the fund, the specific completion date known for 3 facilities with a total investment value of $375 million, while the completion date of the other 3 projects is unknown because they are at earlier stage of development. As of the fund, Paragraph Tabori will be completed in 2025. The project is a part of large-scale project Panorama Tbilisi. A 5-star 190-room hotel is being built on the Sololaki Ridge. According to the project, the center will have high-class meeting rooms with appropriate infrastructure and conference halls. The largest hall will be able to accommodate 3,000 people. Ilya Geperidze, the executive director of Gefferini, notes that the company is planning to open a warehouse in Italy. The brand produces bags, shoes, accessories from leather and leather substitutes. As he explains, the opening of a warehouse in Italy will solve the logistical challenges of the company in exporting from Georgia to the EU markets. Our main plan is to open a warehouse space in Italy from where sales will be made on warehouse for platforms, which I think will be a very good step in the European market and will give us a significant chance of development in different countries. In addition, with this, we will solve logistical problems very easily. Ilya Geperidze notes, according to him, Gefferini accessories are currently exported to 13 countries. Ilya Geperidze notes that the company is also planning to expand its assortment. We won't meet the demand, so we want to increase production and add wallet, bags, belts, and scarves. We also want to further increase the sales chain in Georgia, says Ilya Geperidze. The leather accessories manufacturing company Gefferini has been operating on the Georgian market since 2014. From the company's website, it can be seen that the cost of bags and accessories starts from 30 lari and goes up to 300 lari. In the international market, their product cost ranges from $27 to $200. Ega Tordia, the general director of KAS Group, declares that the company finished to work on the design of Tbilisi TV broadcasting tower. As she told TV program Business Morning, the company is waiting for a construction permit in the near future, and after the launch of the construction, the project will be finished in a year and a half. Tbilisi TV broadcasting tower is an ongoing and active project. We are already at the last stage of designing, and we are waiting for the permission every day. We will have a modernized Tbilisi tower with a visitor center, a restaurant, and a view. With minimal intervention, quite large-scale works we carried out with the participation of both Georgian and foreign specialists. We have passed all the stages already. We will receive the permit soon, and we will probably finish the construction works in a year and a half after the obtaining the permit, said Tordia. Late in August, Georgia will open a new branch in Sachkhere as well. As the general director of the company, Turnike Guruli, said in a conversation with BMWG, their plans for the nearest period include opening additional branches in Poti and Zestaponi. Our products are most in demand along with Tbilisi, Batumi, Kutaisi and Kakheti region, namely in Tel Aviv. This is probably due to the fact that many hotels and shuttles have opened in the city. The Anaklia area is active, so we are still thinking about expansion in Samegrelo. At this stage, we have one store in Zugdidi. We are thinking about opening a new branch in Poti soon. We have already selected the area. I also want to tell you exclusively that the next branch will be opened in Saçkare, Tornike Guruli told Business Morning. The company currently manages 13 hypermarkets across the country. Tornike Guruli notes that the demand for their product is high in the capital as well as in the regions. In the village of Sajavaho, Samtradia municipality tourist facility Porto Hlebi was opened for vacationers over a week ago. As the director of the facility, Lasha Ularjishvili told BMDG, there is already demand from both local and foreign tourists. This year it's still a test for us. We are just entering the market. Demand is high, but the major workload accounts for the weekends. Although we have enough visitors on weekdays, I can say that the hotel is loaded with 100% for the upcoming weeks. As for corporate events, we have already had several private events and there is a great demand. Ularjishvili notes. According to him, within a week, guests from Japan, Ukraine, Estonia and France have already visited the resort. There are 4 hotel-type cottages located in the Porto Hlebi area. The facility is also planning to expand, after which it will receive guests during the year. Speaking about the accommodation prices, Ularjishvili notes that the average price of a hotel room depends on the type of a room. Porto Hlebi currently employs 20 people. The director of the company notes that finding staff for the facility is a challenge, noting that 95% of the employees are local residents. Porto Hlebi is a fully eco-friendly space. 100% of its electricity consumption is generated for solar panels. The law on transparency of foreign influence came into force from August 1. This law mandates the registration of non-commercial entities and media outlets as organizations serving the interests of a foreign power if they receive more than 20% of their income from abroad. According to the law, these organizations must register in a public database under the same name and declare their received income annually. The Ministry of Justice is authorized to conduct research and monitor to identify such organizations, with monitoring permitted once every 6 months. Failure to register as an organization carrying out the interests of foreign power or neglecting to submit the required declaration will lead to a fine of 25,000 lari. Additionally, the law outlets several other fines. Failure to fill out the application from within 10 working days of accessing the Ministry of Justice website will result in a fine of 10,000 lari. If defects in the document are not corrected within the specified period, a fine of 10,000 lari will be imposed. Committing an offense stipulated by the law after 1 month will result in a fine of 20,000 lari. Georgia's Prime Minister Irakli Kobakhidze spoke about the relates to the subsidies for the grape harvest at the cabinet meeting. As Irakli Kobakhidze noted, winemaking has been advancing from one year to another in the country and state support towards this sector is very big. As a result of state support, new vineyards have been planted, new enterprises and new vineyards cadastres have been created. Year by year, the quality of wine is improving. During these years, the export market have expanded significantly. The wine exports and harvests have increased to record high levels. Agro-credit system is functioning efficiently. Everything is being done to develop this field year after year. Special thanks to Minister of Environmental Protection and Agriculture for their efforts. The forecasted grape harvest for 2024 is about 300,000 tons. It's very important for the state to take all measures to ensure that this crop is properly stored and sold. The state will implement a financial intervention to support over 20,000 wine growers, providing them with the opportunity to sell their harvest. Additionally, about 500 companies involved in the harvest will be able to purchase and process grapes smoothly. This is the goal of the subsidy, Prime Minister said. In the first half of 2024, Georgia's tourism revenues reached a record high of $1.9 billion, making a 5.2% increase from the same period last year and surpassing 2019 level by 30.4%, Deputy Minister of Economy and Sustainable Development Mariam Kurvishvili announced. The Deputy Minister attributed this growth to increased contribution from the UN, Gulf countries, more airlines and flights, and effective marketing campaigns. We have optimistic expectations for the current year. We are sure that the tourist sector of Georgia will reach new record levels by the end of the year, which will positively affect the strengthening of the economy of our country, the sustainability of the tourist sector, and of course the well-being of our small and medium-sized enterprises, Mariam Krivishvili declared. Levan Davitashvili, the Minister of Economy and Sustainable Development, assured that the country's European integration process remains ongoing and in line with the Deep Comprehensive Free Trade Agreement obligations. He emphasized that Georgia continues to adapt its legislation and policies to meet EU standards with a key step towards EU membership. The process of European integration is a complex process that includes many indicators. We follow the process from our side. The perceived delays might be due to the ongoing adjustment or divisions on the EU side, not halt in Georgia's efforts. I hope that with our consistent policy, as we have repeatedly shown to the public, including the international community, we will convince our partners that Georgia deserves to be a member of the European Union, said Levan Davitashvili. Regarding new Secretary of State Antony Blinken's recent statement about suspending $95 million USD in aid into Georgia, Davitashvili stated he had no specific details about the aid. He emphasized that Georgia values its partnership with the US and will continue to deepen cooperation with Western allies. We are not involved in the consultations regarding the law on transparency of foreign influence because this law does not concern our financial sector, said Nadia Turnava, the acting president of National Bank of Georgia. She further explained that the law protects banking confidentiality. First of all, it's known that the law does not apply to individuals at all, and in general, special legislation that regulates the banking sector protects banking confidentiality. Therefore, the law has no direct impact on us. We welcome transparency and are one of the most transparent structures, but this law does not directly concern to the financial sector and privacy. Naturally, we should not be involved in this process either, said Turnava. 5,594 permissions were granted in January-June 2024 for the construction of buildings with a total area of 5,393,000 square meters, which is 35% more compared to the previous year, according to the preliminary data from the National Statistics Office of Georgia. As of the document, 74% of the permits have been issued in 4 regions of the country, namely 47% in Tbilisi, 9% in Kemo-Kartli, 8% in Mtskheta-Mtianeti, and 8% in Kakheti region. It should be noted that in January-June 2023, permissions were issued for the construction of multifunctional residential complexes, trade facilities, hotels, industrial enterprises, objects for agriculture purposes, and other buildings. 1,720 objects with total area of 1,600,000 square meters were completed in January-June 2024. More than half of the completed constructions are distributed among 4 regions of the country, namely 27% is located in Tbilisi, 30% in Mtskheta-Mtianeti region, 12% in Kakheti region, and 9% in Imereti region.
The Institute for Development of Freedom of Information, IDFI, published a paper which analyzes the challenges posed by recent amendments to Georgia's tax code known as the Offshore Law, which facilitates the transfer of offshore assets into Georgia. The analysis is considering and covering the country's commitment to creating a beneficial ownership transparency registry and the contemporary trend of increasing accountability for offshore companies and making beneficial ownership data more accessible. Key aspects of the analysis include economic risks, how these amendments might impact the economy, transparency risks, the potential reduction in transparency and accountability, money laundering risks, increased vulnerability to money laundering activities, and other related risks, additional risks associated with these changes. Furthermore, the paper explores how beneficial ownership transparency standards and the current amendments are interlinked and why they may be incompatible. This includes the presentation of ways in which these amendments could would undermine efforts to improve transparency and accountability in Georgia. According to the research, while the declared goal of the amendment to Georgia's tax code is to stimulate foreign investment in the long term, the reputational risks and negative economic consequences far outweigh the potential benefits. The paper reads that to achieve sustainable economic growth, Georgia should focus on attracting transparent investment from reliable sources while bringing its legal framework into line with the FATF international standards on beneficial ownership transparency. We asked Marshall Smets, director of Argos Advisory and head of anti-money laundering department at ICC Georgia, to give a compliance perspective with international standards of the offshore law and the frequently asked questions from the investors on the issue. Mr. Smets, thank you for being with us and taking our questions. Today we will be talking about the money laundering and its regulation in Georgia, and also the international sanctions and how Georgia is dealing with this quite complex regime. So let us start with the money laundering first. And what are some of the main challenges for Georgia in complying with international standards that you see currently?
Okay. Good afternoon, Marine. So it's really a pleasure to be with you. Basically, I'm a director of a company which is Argos Advisory. We are present in Europe mainly, but it is for, I would say now, 3 to 4 years that we have presence in Georgia and in the region. So I will explain, what I see from my perspective, like, working in the region with regulator and working with the main banks in the region. If we have to speak more specifically about Georgia, and what would be, if we have to compare the current regulation and the current framework that we have in Georgia to control money laundering, compare with international standards, and I will make mainly reference to the EU regulation, if we think about the perspective of having to fully align the Georgian regulation with the European regulation, the main challenges that we see overall is, well, the first point I would say is that Georgia is performing pretty well. If we have to compare it, there is a number of assessments which is done on a regular basis, the Moneyval assessment, and Georgia is performing quite well on this. But I think there are certain elements which will become more and more a challenge in the future. And the point that I think it's really important to mention would be cash. Management of cash. So in Georgia, there is still a very much economy which is based on cash, which is quite surprising and completely different with what you will find in Europe. In Europe, there is a lot of regulation. It depends from country to country, but every country has regulation to limit the amount of cash. So the limits that you could have in Europe could vary a lot. In some countries, it's not possible to manage more than 1,000 euro in cash. While in other countries, it would be possible to have much higher amount. When I say much higher amount, it's about 20,000, 25,000, only for some specific type of transaction. In Georgia, this is the biggest weakness that we are facing. This is the biggest weakness, and I think we will speak a little bit later on this, but it's very easy for a bank to control everything that is transaction. So there is a payment which is coming from a third party, you receive it. By all the information that you have in the payment system, you have already a lot of information because you know who is sending the money to whom and for which purpose, on which frequency, because you have everything on the account statement. If you do a payment, which is a payment of 5,000, you receive a payment of 5,000 from Turkey, the bank will ask you, why do you have that transaction, what type of information you have about it, etc., in order to really be able to substantiate the reason of the payment. If you go to a branch in Georgia, and almost in any bank in Georgia, I'm coming with 75,000 US dollar, 75,000 euros, they're not asking questions. So it's just making it so easy for a person who does not want to provide information just to shift the economy, not to do electronic payment, but just to manage cash. And that's the biggest horse, because the bank and the government and whoever is needing to have it is completely blind about this. So cash, it's certainly the biggest difference that you would be facing. Then we can speak about crypto. cryptocurrency, you just walk on the Rustaveli and you will see a lot of shops that are proposing services. They are proposing services usually via individuals who are just making it on their own. By the way, this is cryptocurrency is certainly, the biggest way or the main way that is used in order to transfer funds between Russia and Georgia or the countries. Once again, people are blind and missing ways to be able to control this.
Yes, but crypto, is it Georgia's specific problem at this point?
In Europe, for instance, there has been a very important piece of regulation, which is called the MiCA regulation, which is looking after anti-money laundering, which is looking after conduct practice, so the overall process.
That is what Georgia is missing right now?
Georgia has been ruling it, and they have enacted some regulation which is focused on money laundering. So the money laundering element of cryptocurrency is in the Georgian regulation. And if you want to provide services, you want to be a virtual asset service provider, so someone who is providing service to crypto, then you can apply for license, you can ask for license to the National Bank of Georgia, you have to submit a file and they will review it.
Yes, then why do you see it as a challenge?
Because the NBG has a very strong process to review it, and they will approve a number of it. And the people that are approved, I think those people, obviously they will have further investigation by the NBG, but it means that they have a robust framework. The point is all of the people that are not asking any license, who are individuals, who are buying and selling crypto, and are using their bank account in order to transfer or deposit cash amount which is coming from selling. But they are doing this separately of the activity on the bank account. This is very difficult to track. And those people are not regulated. That's the issue, because there, the point is that it's the financial institution who are providing services to those people who should be in a position to detect that their activity is related with crypto.
Is it an issue of transparency then?
It's an issue on the way the financial institution would be tracking the activity. You have a person for which you don't know what is the profession, or you know that he's an entrepreneur, but you don't have detail. You don't do on-site visit, but you see that there is a lot of cash. We go back to cash because usually this will be cash movement at UA, cash deposit, cash withdrawal, and you don't know what his activity is related to, because in your system you have the information that he is either just a businessman or that he is a student or an employee in something, and what you see on the transactional activity is not matching the KYC. That's an issue. Because the other point that I want to mention is on the weaknesses of the financial institution in Georgia. Today, from a compliance perspective, where the European banks are spending their money is looking at the quality of the data. They are spending millions on this. In Georgia, there is almost no focus on this, because the regulator, the approach of the regulator is to be able to fine a bank or financial institution if they see a breach. A breach is, for instance, you do not have the identity card of the person, or you do not know exactly what is the professional activity of the person. Now, if I'm a Georgian bank and I have an inspection from the regulator, and they ask me, could you please provide me the information related with this specific file? I look in what I have in my information. If I'm missing the ID card, I will contact the client. I will say, please send me right now the ID card, and please provide me the KYC information so that I can present the file to the regulator, which is fine. So when I have the inspection, I'm in a position to provide information to the regulator, so there is no breach. Even if before that, my file, my database was missing the information. In Europe, what you will do, you take the full database. You take the full database and you look at all the missing information. You look at the recurrence that you would have in some information in order to be able to assess the quality. And then you can evidence where you would have issues in terms of control process. So there is no need to have a breach. But if I cannot prove that I have the proper quality in my database, I will be fined. And I will be fined seriously. So the approach is completely different. There is no need to breach something. But if I'm not able to demonstrate as a European bank that I have the proper control process in place all the time, then I will be fined. So the approach is different.
Mr. Smets, how compatible are current changes to the tax code, the so-called offshore law, to the international requirements and to the challenges that you just mentioned in regards to the money laundering and how it is regulated in Georgia, and what we can say from the business, from the investor perspective? Does it add or does it alleviate the uncertainties that you have to operate in this complex situation?
If we speak about the offshore tax law, basically this would be a way for the country to try to attract foreign investment. That's the concept behind it. So now, you know, of course, that when you try to attract foreign investment, you will have some good source of funds that will be used in a country, and you could have less good source of funds. You know, before working and having a focus in this region, I have worked quite a lot of time in Malta. And in Malta, they had absolutely not the same concept of law, but they had a specific tax regime which basically was done specifically to be able to develop Maltese companies owned by foreign investors, and this was basically a way to attract foreign investment into the country. I have to say that after that concept that has been in place for something like 15 years, this has been dragging a lot of negative reputation on Malta, which led the country to be at one point in time grey listed by the FATF. So this was the only European country which at one point in time was grey listed. And it was because they tried to attract foreign investment, and they've been able to do it. But in that foreign investment, there were some good investment and there were really less good investment, which has been completely tarnishing the reputation. So the concept here, when you have that type of law in Georgia, is that if you want to attract investment, you need to be sure that you put in place the control mechanism to ensure that you will understand exactly which funds will be brought in the country. So how much I'm sure that I know exactly who owns the funds, how the funds have been generated, what is the tax status of this, what is the money laundering element on it, do I have any type of sanction risk, sanction exposure on those elements? And it's all of that control mechanism that so far...
Everything that is against the offshore concept itself, right? If we look at it that way.
Yes, of course, you know, that's the concept. But, you know, willing to attract funds,
yeah, of course.
It's a normal concept. But the key point is really to be sure that there is the control mechanism. If not, you take a huge risk with your reputation.
Yes, you mentioned FAT, right? If I'm right, and the gray zone. What does that mean for the countries? And do you see that perspective for Georgia?
FATF, this is type of international guidelines which every country try to incorporate. And this is really, you know, the standards. That's the baseline. Now, obviously, every country is assessed regularly by some subcommittee of the FATF, which, in our case, in Georgia, it's Moneyval. So Moneyval has they've been doing an assessment, and then we will see the outcome of this. But the element, so they look at different elements. They could be looking at the banking sector, they could be looking at the regulator, they could be looking at the political environment. They will look at the justice, the enforcement of the different elements. So it's really an holistic approach that they take, and then they will come with a number of recommendations. It could lead, if they see important weaknesses, this could lead to being what is called grey listed. If you are grey listed, I can tell you this is becoming a nightmare for any type of financial institution in the country. Because the main risk there is that you would be losing your correspondent banking relationship. So you will not be able to process, to clear USD transaction or Euro transaction. Let's take some examples in the region. Pakistan has been grey listed several times regularly. In Pakistan, it's a nightmare to be able to clear US dollar or euro, because no one's or limited number of banks wants to provide services, and if they provide services, they will say, I will only provide to those companies for that type of services, which is then pushing a lot of companies to go to the shadow market,
Of course.
which is even worse.
Yes. I hope it doesn't go there. You mentioned, okay, this is about the offshore law, but you also said that if it might be looking at the regulator as well. On the NBG side, on the regulator side, we have this new law that is regarding the international sanctions regime, which has a different kind of regime for Georgian citizens. This has been vastly criticized by IMF, for example. What role does this play in creating and adding on the uncertainty that we have been talking about?
Let me first answer in a slightly different manner. Let's take it from the side of the banks. In Georgia, the understanding of the risk on sanction is quite high. So from that perspective, the Georgian bank, because that's a quite mature market, they know perfectly that this is an absolute requirement for them. This is a sine qua non, a condition to be in compliance.
And the structural banks are listed on London Stock Exchange, which is also a factor.
In addition. So they know perfectly that they have to comply with sanctions regulation, because the risk for them is absolutely huge. If you look at some fines that have been provided to banks, the BNPP has been fined in 2015 of around 6.7 billion US dollar. UniCredit has been fined for 2.3 billion US dollar. So this is absolutely massive. By the way, absolutely not comparable with fines that could be issued by local regulator. So if a Georgian bank has to do the risk management, all of them know that this is absolutely essential. And outside of speaking about the fine, they know that there is the risk of losing the ability to clear US dollar. If a Georgian bank is not able, or speaking about the big ones, not able to process US dollar, better to close the door. So from that perspective, Georgian banks understand perfectly what is the environment that they are living in. The point on those changes in the local regulation, I would see it slightly differently. When a correspondent bank is making an assessment, let's imagine that JP Morgan, Citigroup, they provide services to Georgian banks. What they do is that, similarly as you do for any client, they reassess periodically the relationship. So they look at how strong the bank is, what about the financials, and what about compliance element. Compliance is key in that assessment. When they do a compliance assessment, they look at the bank itself, but not only. The first element that they look is the reputation of the country. And in the reputation of the country, they will look at the regulation, they will look at the regulator, they will look at the political stability. So they will take all of the environments. So what I see here as the main risk, which is really important to be able to manage, is the perception of the stability of the country and to ensure that we provide trust outside. Because they would start, when they are making the assessment, they would first think about, okay, what is about Georgia? Do I have important adverse media in Georgia? Do I have seen some important circumvention case? What is the strength of the regulator and the government?
And the same border with elements. Russia, it is already a serious impediment. I mean, the serious basis for the doubt that there might be some
exactly.
Some
so this
relation.
is all of those elements for which I think it is very important, because they think first about the reputation of the country. And that's where we have a risk. So you could have the Georgian banks that are extremely strong, but if the environment is not providing that level of trust to the third countries, then it could be a risk for being able to still provide USD clearing services, Euro clearing services, etc.
Yes, you are also chair of the ICC's whole department on money laundering, right? What are some of the frequently asked questions about these issues regarding money laundering rules and regulations in Georgia, and also international sanctions regime, and whether Georgia is part of the regime?
Yeah. So at this stage, all of the focus and all of the question from the banking sector is about sanctions. Mm-hmm. That's where all the questions are going to. We have to understand that before 2022, Georgia was like a banking paradise, in the sense that for Georgian bank, it was extremely easy to be able to control. Regulation was much easier, and then just by putting some basic controls, it was possible to mitigate properly the risk, meaning that it was possible to control your environment. Now, because of the whole new set of regulations against Russia, which is basically looking after the Russian industry in itself, the environment completely changed in Georgia. And we are not living anymore in an environment where it's really easy to control the risk. So if the banks understand that this is key, the issue is not about the understanding, but it's about how I'm able to control this. Even with the best banks, can we be sure that there is no circumvention case? Of course not. Because, as I mentioned, we have data quality issue, because we have to reinvent all the control process, because this is completely a new way of doing it, and we even don't know, because of the level of complexity of the regulation, we don't know what is really in focus and what is not in focus. Without being technical, there has been a number of US regulation issued, which is saying that basically, if you support...
So drawing more scrutiny into this process might also be a risk, right? Like making the environment work against you in this case.
There is just no other way to do. Because we need to be able to demonstrate to the other parties that we fully control what is happening on our side. You could have, and this is happening, correspondent banks that are telling you, I do not want to process any transaction for that type of sector of activity. No transaction related with cars, no transaction related with cement, no transaction related with people who have a residence in Russia. You need to be sure that you are able to control this. Mm-hmm. So this is about your data quality, this is about your control mechanism. Okay? And that's where all of the risk is. And now really the focus of some of the sanctions regulation is to say we should not be providing any support to the manufacturing industry in Russia. What does it mean? If you have a Georgian company who is buying bricks in Russia, that's manufacturing business. You are a bank who is having an account for Georgian client buying bricks in Russia, you could be fined. You could be liable. You could be going even onto the sanction list. So the level of complexity and uncertainty about what is really targeted by sanction is absolutely unprecedented. There has been no comparison with this. Maybe a little bit similar to the regulation on Iran that was happening in 2008, which has generated a lot of fines against European banks. So this is why now we are really living in a very complex environment, and no one can tell you that there is no circumvention or there is no risk of having a Georgian bank or a Georgian company being fined or having serious problem for sanction circumvention.
Thank you for explaining this complex situation in detail, Mr. Smets. And probably my last question to you would be, what does business need today to have that certainty to do business and to comply with sanctions and not to be fined and not to have this reputational stain on them?
Oh, that's a very difficult question. You have to rethink about everything, all elements, because the environment completely changed. So you have to think about process that you put in place, about the tools that you have in place, about the people that are involved. But you have to think about your culture in the company. The control mechanism is a question of the whole bank that has to think about it. While before it was delegated to some small departments. It's not possible. It's the culture who has to change. So that's extremely difficult. You have to look after all the different elements. So it's massive investments, and the banks have to really to run every single day in order to be able, to keep up with the change in the environments.
But do you think this regulation will stay and will stay at that level? Because the sanction regimes, probably it's a long period of time, but is it like forever? Because how does this culture that needs to change adjust to I don't know, maybe a better world?
Yeah, the answer is that
in the coming years.
Yeah, no one knows how much time. If you want my bet, it's 4 years. We have this problem 4 years. Okay, so I think that anyone that is interested by the sanctions problem, they are doing, I think, a very good investment for their professional career, because I'm sure, my opinion, that this problem will stay for a very long time. And even if tomorrow there is a solution of the war between Ukraine and Russia, the concept of sanctions is a concept that has been only growing. So tomorrow it could be used for China. It could be used for Afghanistan. It could be used for India. This is a tool which is used more and more by all the US authorities, EU authorities. So I'm absolutely sure that even if there is a resolution of the war in Russia, the problem of sanction is a problem that is only growing. Apologies for this.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You are welcome, René.
This was the season's last checkpoints. This year we will meet in September, but before that, you know what to do. You have to regularly check us out on bm.g for more information about economics and business in Georgia, in region and beyond. See you in September.
The Checkpoints is presented by pharmaceutical company GM Pharma.